change it for whatever would be better for the student.
Yeah. Okay. While we have talked about the student's role in being successful in school, we haven't really talked about the teacher's role in being successful in school. So, what is the teacher's role in a student's success? Well, it really comes down to subject-object duality, because a teacher could be up there speaking to a class and teaching, but they have no way of actually knowing that what they're saying is being processed and understood by the students. So let's look at some methods about how teachers can influence the way a student learns.
So, Nita, how do teachers' expectations relate to student success in school?
Well, according to the expectation performance model by Lux in 1993, the teacher's expectations of the student will impact the way that the student performs in school. So if there's a high-performing student, the teacher will have higher expectations of that student, and as a result, that student will perform at a higher level than a student who the teacher has low expectations of. The expectation performance model is a four-step process. The first step is that the teacher has certain expectations of a particular student. The second step is when these expectations start to influence that teacher's treatment of the student. The third step is when the teacher's treatment of the student begins to impact that student's performance. And this eventually all leads to the fourth step, in which the student's behavior will conform to the expectations of the teacher. Okay, well, I think that because teaching and learning are so connected, teachers have a large impact on student success in school. For example, some of my teachers just ask me questions. How does that help?
Oh, that's the Socratic method. The instructors sort of guide the student into learning things by making them answer these questions themselves. These questions are asked to the student, and because the student is finding the answers within themselves, it's a sort of guided learning, and they're using their own experience to understand the knowledge and the topics.
So do you think that relates to a sort of emotional understanding of the topic rather than just being told?
Well, yeah, that's an emotional aspect, but also reason-based too, because they're reasoning out the answers.
So, an important thing to note is that a student can be intelligent without getting good grades.
So what you're saying is that being successful in school isn't directly related to actually learning, right?
Yeah, well, school has its own methodology in that also has its own limitations and strengths. For example, there are values or good things about school are the experienced teachers, the resources, the different areas of knowledge you get to explore, the social interaction with students in helping you build your knowledge and understanding. But then there's also limitations with not a lot of time to figure out and experiment with all these resources. Less focus on like divergent aesthetic experiences, divergent thinking, and teaching styles are generally different among teachers, which means you have to conform to each one.
Or also, like, teachers usually teach the material in the way that they see best, but they can only do it in one way at a time, so that's why it's kind of generalized for the whole class. So if they're using like a particular method to teach a subject, everyone in the class is learning it that same way, so it might not be beneficial for all students all the time.
And also behind that methodology is an overall purpose for school, and that can also be debated, that it's to teach us to be prepared for life events like next college or another higher education or life, or also to meet requirements put into place by governments, state standards and national standards for learning.
So I think that you need to kind of accept accept the values and limitations of school, and some of the ways to overcome those limitations is to take an active role in your own learning, because as we talked about, teaching and learning, that involves subject-object duality, so the student definitely has a responsibility in their own learning.
So I guess there's no clear-cut reason why some students fail and others succeed. But if you want to be a successful student, the best thing you can do is really just experiment, not be afraid to fail, and learn from your mistakes, and have a global perspective.
Sure, go ahead, Nita.
Why are some students successful in school?
Well, Nita, to answer your question, some students are successful for a variety of different reasons, but I think it comes down to the definitions of teaching and learning. Now, both teaching and learning play a part. This is called subject-object duality. Both the student and the teacher have to participate in order to pass on knowledge. What is it, Nita?
So, what's the role of the student and the teacher in learning?
Well, to start off, the teacher plays an important role in the learning process as well. For example, the expectations that a teacher has of a student could influence the learning of the student.
Oh yeah, like the expectation performance model.
That's exactly right. Good job, Nita. Now, the Socratic method is one way that the teacher can pass on this information to a student. And this ties into the experience sort of theory on learning, where if they come to these conclusions themselves, for example, by living these ideas and putting the theories into practice themselves, they come to the conclusions and internalize these ideas and topics through guided learning. Now, the student also has to put in the effort to learn as well. They need to have the motivation to learn about these specific areas of knowledge.
Is that kind of like emotion? Like you have to have the emotional drive to pursue knowledge?
Right. All of the ways of knowing play an important part in the learning process. Also, inherent traits of the students themselves play a very important role. I'll explain. Someone like you, Nita, is more theater-minded, right?
Yeah.
Well, to understand concepts that are more scientific or math in nature, which you said you had some problems with, you could relate these ideas to ideas in theater.
Oh.
Through these analogies and getting these different sorts of perspectives on topics, you can develop further understanding and just greater internalization of the concepts that you didn't understand before.
Well, okay, you did say that there was something you wanted to say about math, so why don't you just tell us that?
Well, I don't remember it now. It was like that, like, you know how a conversation, there's like, I don't know, like an emergent property of theater, I would say, is like synergy, you know? Like it's, all the people still exist when they're not in the theater, but together they make an ensemble, and then there's synergy, and that's an emergent property of an ensemble. And so, like, when we were talking, I had this idea, and like now it's gone because it was it like emerged from the conversation. It was an organic thing, and like now I don't really remember, but I had so many ideas. I felt like comfortable talking about math at the time, and now I don't really know
So
what I
like
was
the
gonna
fact
say.
that I'm not like falling on the ground because of this chair is because like the atoms have synergy and are creating an
If that
ensemble.
analogy
Yeah.
helps you understand it, yeah, this analogy,
Yeah.
analogies help people understand if you put it in what you understand.
I understand every subject when I talk relate it to theater.
Somebody say
Exactly, yeah.
somebody say like how analogies help other people understand based on their expertise in their area of knowledge.
Yeah.
Like it connects it to that.
Yeah. I think that's
Exactly,
So we can
Cameron,
be like-
my friendly cameraman.
Well, we can be like, okay, so what we've learned is, to recap what we've learned, certain people connect to certain areas of knowledge in a greater way, better words, but like, so that's why you have trouble understanding the areas of knowledge that you don't have an emotional connection to, and then we're like, how can we solve this problem?
I think people inherently have this emotional connection to a certain area of knowledge, and they grow this knowledge in other areas by relating it to a certain area, because
I was gonna say,
some people are more math-based, and some people are more theater-based, and by relating these areas of knowledge to the other areas of knowledge that they do understand and know well and is internalized inside them, they can reach greater understanding of these other things.
Yeah, because like the strongest concepts are the ones that transcend, you know, the specific area of knowledge. Just like you have to combine the areas of knowledge and combine the ways of knowing to form like a cubist perspective and really understand the world.
That led us to our conclusion that we have to take a cubist approach on things. Now, this means that you have to get as many viewpoints as possible on a topic or an idea, and this way you can further gain understanding of something that you may not have noticed before. Take this eraser, for example. On this side, you see one half of it without even seeing the eraser part. But when viewing it from the other side, taking a cubist approach, and this side, you begin to see the whole picture. Therefore, we believe that a cubist approach is the best way for a student to become successful in school.
We're out!